that is hosting today's Inception workshop.
Recording has started.
I would like to welcome all the project stakeholders, speakers, participants, and my colleagues who have joined us today from different locations through virtual platform under this special circumstance. For your information, I'm moderating the session from India. Before going into our presentation of Day 2 workshop, I would like to invite Dr. Ravi Ketrapat, Executive Secretary, APARI, Thailand, to open second day of Inception workshop by presenting the role of APARI, importance of developing functional capacities in the project, and success stories of implementing functional capacities with technical capacities in our project. I request Dr. Ravi to reflect his ideas from Day 1 presentation and how today's interactive workshop would be helping us in achieving a progressive result in the project. I welcome Dr. Ravi, who is currently joining us from New Delhi, the capital city of India.
Thank you, Sasi. Well, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have half the people who joined yesterday. I think more are coming. I have a great pleasure, first of all, to welcome each and every participant, the project beneficiaries, the experts, and the project partners. I will give a brief on what happened yesterday and then highlight the importance of the sessions today. I won't take much time. First of all, I would like to again thank Michael for conducting the session excellently and bringing all the technical components at one platform and getting the presentations done by experts like Wen Jiang, Dr. Wu, and Dr. Shahid, Dr. Stefan, Dr. Thomas Jakal, and Dr. Vasant Patil, all of whom gave their presentation on various aspects of the project capacity building and on regulatory cooperation and also on the bioefficacy protocol and harmonization work plans, which finally set the stage now for the project to take its shape on the ground in a practical manner. The key points which came yesterday from all the presentations were dates to be noted by the project beneficiaries, the group lab training from August 10, the group field training from August 25. Then there'll be generation of residue decline data with some of the countries, and there'll be work to generate biopesticide efficacy studies. And also by the end of the year, last quarter of the year, we'll have a workshop on small-scale microbial biopesticide manufacturing. And early next year, we will have courtesy CropLife Asia, the bioefficacy protocol harmonization workshop, which will be followed in the middle of the year, somewhere in June, July, the regulatory cooperation and harmonization workshop, which now the timelines, the dates, what we have said, we have to keep in mind. One for the August, which is online, it is going to be there. But for the early next year and the middle of next year face-to-face meeting, we all will see how COVID-19 behaves. Hopefully, we should be able to meet face-to-face, but that is a challenge. We all need to look at how we face it. Another message I want to give to the project beneficiaries from yesterday's presentations are now, given these things, the work plan very clearly to everyone, they need to ensure their team in place and they need to ensure the kind of preparedness much in advance, which would be very useful for the capacity building and other training programs. For today's workshop, we have another element of the technical part which could not be done yesterday. We have Alan Norgan, who will be speaking on guidance document of OECD on exchange and use of international efficacy and crop safety data for minor use series. And that will make a complete picture of the technical components which we are going to cover in the project. And that will be followed by 4 important presentations from Apari, from my colleagues. First will be on the functional capacity by Martina, and she will be speaking on mainly on the, it is going to be an interactive presentation. She'll be talking on functional capacity. And many of you may be wondering what functional capacity actually means. Uh, in fact, Apari is a member of Tropical Agriculture Platform of FAO, which has called for change and innovation system in the capacity development, where capacity development for agriculture innovation system has been brought out, which actually captures the point for capacity development to navigate the complexities, to collaborate, to reflect and learn, and to engage in strategic processes, which are very crucial for really carrying forward the outputs of the technical capacity which is being built. And this capacity development, which comes under the capacity development of agriculture innovation system, we talk here of the functional capacities, which Martina will be trying to elaborate in a very interactive session. And I may like to add here again that now there is a global pattern coming up where they say if you only build technical capacity, we are not necessarily achieving the output. So we have taken the responsibility of in all the projects of Apari, wherever there is a technical capacity building, we are blending the technical capacity with the functional skills or the functional capacity or what you call the soft skills in the program, which we feel will go a long way in really having the outputs of the technical capacity. After that, Martina is going to continue. She's going to talk on knowledge management strategy, which is coming up and which is in sync with STDF communication strategy, which will really be useful to ensure that we capture the stakeholders, we keep the stakeholders properly informed, we classify the kind of stakeholders, whether they are policymakers, they are technical people, they are farmers, they are the private companies, all those beneficiaries of the project, we want to keep them well informed of what is going on and what all we are doing in the project so that by the time we end the project, we really come up with something concrete, with people well informed and well sensitized on the outputs of the project. Then we will have a presentation on monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and learning by our policy coordinator, Nora Omot. She is an expert on monitoring and evaluation, and she'll talk on the importance of monitoring and evaluation and of the capturing the progress, which is very crucial. And so we are going to do an impact pathway assessment very clearly at all levels of the outputs or all levels of the intermediate outcomes, and so that finally we can see that project has come to a logical conclusion, because without an impact, doing a project has only an academic importance. And to capture the impact itself is very important, and we have chalked out a very clear program on monitoring, evaluation, reporting, and learning. After this is a talk by Mr. Manish Rai, who is a finance and admin coordinator of Apari. And his talk is very crucial for the project beneficiary partners for their day-to-day working. He's going to deal with all the issues of finance, of the budget, and also of the agreements, the kind of MOUs that are to be signed, and the financial management, and the do's and don'ts within the limit of the STDF project and the STDF principles, how we can move forward. So with these few words, I would like to stop here. I again welcome each and every one of you, and we are sure we will have a very, very interactive session today. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, for highlighting the works of Apari and providing an overall outline on today's session. We really appreciate that. One more reminder to the participants, if you have connection issues and if you're trying to connect back, please mute your microphone and turn off your video when you're joining back. So we would now go into our day 2 presentation of the Inception workshop. I would like to present you the agenda for day 2. We have presentation on guidance document on the exchange and use of international efficacy and crop safety data for minor users series on pesticides, interactive presentation on functional capacities, strategy and priorities, followed by a tea break. Then we'll continue with interactive presentation on the project's knowledge management strategy, an overview of monitoring, evaluation, reporting and learning, and a final presentation on administration and finance. So next slide, please. Our objectives for the day 2 presentation would be to raise awareness about the guidance documents, understand capacity development initiatives and strategy, understand the importance of knowledge management, understand the project's policy on administration and finance, agree on the way forward, build commitment towards the project. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce the speakers. Dr. Ravi has already given you an overview of the speakers today. I would just add up to his points. Our speakers, next slide please. Sorry. So our first speaker for today's session would be Mr. Alan Norden, Director of Minor Use Foundation, a consultant and member in Regulatory Agency of Australia. We then have Ms. Martina Spasiakova, Knowledge Management Coordinator, APARI, Thailand. She has been successfully handling many collaborative projects in APARI to help in the functional capacities development, improving communication between stakeholders and dissemination of results from the project. Our next speaker for today is Dr. Nora Omat, Policy Coordinator and Economist, APARI. Dr. Omat is coordinating Agricultural Science and Technology Indicators ASTI project in collaboration with International Food Policy Research Institute. Our last speaker for today would be Mr. Manish Rai, Finance Coordinator, APARI. He has been successfully monitoring and handling the finances of APARI projects. Previous slide, please. So before going into the actual presentation, I would also like to remind the participants to mute their speakers and turn off their video during the presentation. Please provide your name, email ID, designation, and the institute in the chat box so that we could get back to you after the session. Once, if you have a question during the presentation, please feel free to post it in the chat box. After the presentation, we would be having a Q&A session where the speakers would be addressing your questions. If needed, the moderators would unmute you and you can interact with the presenters as well. With this, I now request Dr. Alan Norden to present. Please take over the session.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me and you can see me. So it's
yes,
a pleasure
to be. And it's a pleasure to have you from Canberra, Australia. Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I have probably met many of you at many different international meetings. So today I wanted to give you a bit of background on this guidance document that we wrote in OECD and what it might look like in a potential future broadened out training session. Just to give you a bit of background to myself, my name's Alan Norden. I've recently, only within the last month, commenced as a director on the board of the Minor Use Foundation. Prior to this, I was employed by the Australian government, working for the last 26 years with the national regulator, the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, where I held most recently the position as Executive Director of the registration program since 2014. Prior to that, I was the Director for Minor Use at the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. So I have a long history in the area of minor use. I'm quite passionate about the area. I like working with both the chemical regulated industry, particularly growers, in trying to find solutions to crop protection needs that they need to pursue to protect and produce safe and healthy food. Essentially, while I was at the APVMA as Executive Director of Registration, we look after all registration decisions to do with both pesticides and also veterinary medicines. So there's quite a large group of activities within that. That includes both new active ingredients, extensions of use, and then also dealing with generic products and the generic product registration. One of the things I've always found, and this is what interested me about the efficacy and crop safety aspects of minor use, was that I think internationally we've done a lot of work in the areas of residues, and that's really good. How we extrapolate, how we crop group, and a lot of the environmental human health assessments that are performed are fairly well taken care of. However, when we get into the area of efficacy and crop safety, I find that there's often a lack of information about, how can we go about some unique and pragmatic ways of using the data that's available to us, not just within our regions, but also across the globe. So that's a little bit of an introduction to myself and probably a bit of a taste for the document itself, which I'll go through. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So today I'd like to give you a little bit more of background and outline to the OECD guidance document on the exchange and use of international efficacy and crop safety data, and how and what components of that would form a future training session. If I can go to the next slide, please. Firstly, a little bit about the OECD Expert Group on Minor Uses. The Expert Group was established in 2007. It actually formed out of a workshop that was held in 2002. It was actually held here in Canberra in Australia. The OECD would have meetings in different countries back then every year, and we were fortunate enough to have a session back then in 2002. That really spruiked my interest in the area of minor uses as well, and we'd done a lot of work, and then we established this group in 2007. There's approximately 25 members within the expert group, and they come from a range of different fields. Government regulators, the chemical industry itself, and that's not just the chemical industry, but it's also the biopesticide industry as well. They attend the OECD meetings, and they're also members of our expert group. And then there's also members from minor use programs. So the likes of IR4, Pest Management Centre in Canada, for example, are also members of our expert group on minor uses and contribute to the work that we do. The expert group's published a number of various different survey documents and also a range of guidance documents as well. And 3 of those guidance documents that are actually published on, and you can find these on the OECD website under the working group of pesticides. And the one we'll talk about today is the first one, which is about the exchange and use of international efficacy and crop safety data. But we've also had a couple of other guidance documents that we've published on, how do you go about defining a minor use? There's a lot of differences of opinion between regulators and industry, and even between regulators about what minor uses are. So there's a document there that talks about that. But importantly, also other areas about regulatory incentives. So how do we incentivize people to invest in minor uses and to bring those uses to label and to regulators as well? Because often the reason that we find ourselves in those situations is because of a lack of economic return. So to the guidance document itself, and a little bit more about that, it's actually the first published dedicated document to efficacy and target safety, crop safety, that's actually been done within the working group on pesticides. And that's out of over 100 published documents that come out of the working group on pesticides. And it collates principles used by many regulators in the approaches and considerations taken when using non-site or non-country specific data. The guidance, whilst written for minor uses, actually includes principles that can also be used for major uses, appreciating that some differences may exist depending on the level of satisfaction necessary by the regulator and the amount of information that you've actually got at the time. Its application will vary, and there's really no one rule to be applied, as each circumstance will differ based on the use, the crop, the product, and the information being relied on to support that particular application. The document contains 4 key areas. The basic principle provides a summary overview of the elements which will make the data and information actually relevant in relation to the consideration that's being undertaken. But it also outlines what should be considered and needed when looking at relying on authorisations in another country or region, and goes into the process of how you would go about that, how a submitter would submit the application, what are the components of the application that are required, and then also how regulators may then exchange that information between themselves if they're prepared to do that and they're supported to do that as well. But it also goes further into the relevance of foreign data, and that's probably the key area of the document where it then starts to talk about the agronomic considerations that need to be undertaken, the environmental, the climatic, the soil type, the crop and pest biology that's going on in the area and the data that you're actually looking at, and how do you determine is that data relevant to your situation or not. But it's also to understand that it may not be standalone data. So you may not just be relying on the international data, but you might be using that as supplementary data to bridge some local data that you might have as well, or data that's come from related commodities. So there is components of extrapolation of data between different target species in pests and diseases, but then also in cropping situations as well. So in terms of the application of the guidance, what I would consider doing in that future training session would to cover in more detail each of the key areas that I spoke about and how they interrelate. They're not each area, you don't look at it in isolation. As I said, the main area there in the document is about the relevance of the foreign data that you're going to be presented with, or you're looking at presenting to a regulator. And it would cover how they interrelate in all those different areas. But then the factors considering if you're a person who's going to prepare an application, but then also to look at it from if you're a person who's actually doing a regulatory assessment and making a decision about your satisfaction around that. Understanding again that may change from country to country and from regulator to regulator, which will vary depending upon country-specific data requirements that might exist. It may also vary depending upon the policy approaches that are taken within each of those governments and each of those regulatory systems as well. So a common rule that I apply to guidance documents is that it's a guidance document and it's there to give you assistance from a scientific thinking point about the concepts and the principles that you need to consider when you are looking at foreign data. It's not a document that makes the decision for you. In the training session, we would also go through some examples. So when an example might be quite positive. So what were the good attributes to the use of foreign data? And then also go through examples of situations that might result in negative decisions. So what situations are going to be more challenging and which situations might be more straightforward in relation to using that foreign data. So I guess there's a lot to consider in there. I haven't as yet prepared what that whole training session might look like, and I'd welcome any feedback on particular areas that people are quite interested in relation to that, be it country. It could be quite foreign data in relation to it's coming from a completely different climatic zone. It could be guidance on zonal data as well, so data that's generated within a specific region. So there's a number of different ways that you could actually approach a training session of this, and different components that you would actually go through and build out and flesh out and discuss and provide information for. So I'm happy to take any questions and any feedback just in relation to, as I said, it's really trying to work out what are the key components in the areas that you as participants need out of these sessions as well, to make sure that the sessions that are provided, do deliver what you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We now invite the participants to post their questions or feedbacks on guidance document. We have 5 minutes for Q&A session, and I invite the participants to actively participate in today's session. You can also raise your hand and we will unmute for you so you can interact with Alan.
This is Michael Braverman with IR4. I just wanted to make a comment so everybody's aware of what the plan is more specifically. So we had a presentation by Vasant yesterday in sort of a related area, and also by Thomas Jackal on regulatory harmonization. So the plan is to have one day added on to the regulatory harmonization training with Thomas. So that will be in approximately July 2021. And hopefully the meeting that Vasant described will be in March of 2021. So hopefully we will sort of initiate this area in March of 2021, and then the meeting in July with Alan will help as a follow-up and see how we can mesh those ideas.
Thank you, Michael, for adding the comment. We have one question from the participant. Alan, it is, what is the difference in OECD guidance versus others from Codex or US IR4?
Okay. Well, the Codex documents would be specifically around trade-related residue guidance documents. IR4, Michael might be able to speak to any guidance documents that IR4 have. Obviously, IR4 do what they call performance data generation, and also do crop safety data generation as well as residue trials. The OECD documents are specifically written for regulatory risk assessment for registration decisions. So Codex are looking at establishing Codex limits for the purposes of trade. They're not what I would call country-based regulatory decisions in relation to registration.
Thank you, Alan. This was put by Mr. Vasant. I hope this has answered his question. Is there any other question from the participants? If not, we'll be moving on to the next session. Thank you so much, Alan, for the wonderful presentation and clarifications.
Thank you.
I now invite Ms. Martina Spesiakova, Knowledge Management Coordinator, to present the importance of functional capacity, strategies, and work plan related to this pesticide management project. She would be giving us 2 presentations today, one before the tea break and one followed by the tea break. 2 presentations will require your active participation and will be highly interactive throughout the presentation. I request Ms. Martina to finish her presentation in 35 minutes, followed by Q&A session for 15 minutes. Martina is joining us from Vienna, Austria. I now request Ms. Martina to take over the session for next 50 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasireka. Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. Good evening to all of you. So very briefly about myself, I have been with APARI for the past 4.5 years. And before this assignment, I spent 2.5 years in Indonesia with UN ESCAP. I was working on an EU-funded project called SatNet Asia. Some of you might be actually familiar with this project because it had a trade facilitation component. And just before this assignment, I actually spent 12 years in IFAD in Rome. where I was responsible for integrating knowledge management and strategic communications in investment projects. So I will be talking about, in this first presentation, about functional capacity development and what is the actual approach that we are taking in this project. And I was thinking, how to start this interactive session because, of course, it's very easy when you meet face-to-face. You can use Post-it, you can use different types of knowledge management approaches. But when we are online, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, but I trust that with your collaboration, we can do it. So I have sent in my email recently, I think 2 days ago, a set of questions, and I was asking you to come to this meeting prepared because it's going to save us a lot of time, but also I just wanted to give you a hint what this session is going to be about. And, normally when we start new projects, we always, at Inception meetings, we ask the participants that are going to be participating actively in the project implementation, what are their expectations? So I would like you to just take 1 minute and just write a few lines in the chat box. What do you expect from this project? It could be anything because we all might have different expectations. So I think it's very important to set them clearly from the beginning. And what we're going to do, because my colleague Nora will be presenting the M&E system of the project. So at the end, when we come back at the end of the project, again, we are going to be looking at these expectations and see whether we have actually been able to deliver them. Okay? So please go ahead and just start typing. We're not going to read them all, but we are going to include them in our meeting report, okay, for further reference. So please just start typing your expectations in the chat box. All of you, we have 55 participants. So I want to really see some of your inputs, hopefully from at least half of the participants. Of course, including our project management team. Yeah, I think it's also important to hear from all of us, from these different actors that are involved in the implementation. We also have Catalina, so we might also hear from her. And also, especially from country participants. This is really important. So we have already something from Mr. Ishtiaq. So he expects biocontrol solutions in place of problematic pesticides. So using biopesticides and mitigating the hazard of conventional pesticides would be great for the safety of consumer. Okay. But what do you actually expect that the project should be achieving? Okay. So I think that is clear from Ibu Sri from Indonesia. Come on, we need more. We have 53 people online. So if everybody starts typing, we should get at least 50 lines in there. From Ravi, an output of technical and functional skills built to mitigate residues to use by use of biopesticides and policy uptake for the same. Yep. Awareness on codex standards to all the countries. Mr. Fernando, capacity building for local manufacture and testing of efficacy and introduction of proper regulatory mechanisms for registration of biopesticides. So as you can see, we all have different expectations. Adriana Castañeda, I would like to learn from organization experiences of this project in order to implement them in a possible project in Latin America. Okay. Creating awareness among growers and policymakers to understand MRLs and adopting local biocontrol solutions to sustainable solutions. Okay, I guess that the others are still reflecting on what could be their expectations, or maybe you still don't have any expectations. Maybe you're waiting for this day to complete, and then you will have your expectations afterwards. But if you have something to say, please just use the chat box, and we will be very happy to see your expectation, okay? As I said, we will be recording it in our documentation. So I will be continuing my presentation, talking about the concept of capacity development. So yesterday, and also those who have been involved in previous meetings, we have been talking mostly about technical training and development of functional capacities. But what we really need to look at in this project is not just these two areas. There is much more that is behind capacity development. And there are all these things that I have included in my slides. So what we are really also aiming at is a creation of a network of scientists, of practitioners that will be serving for kind of a peer assist, for collaboration for the future. So this can actually go beyond the project. And, you know, many of you will be also training farmers, training scientists. You will be also interacting with policymakers. So, of course, coaching and mentoring is really important here. And this will be integrated in the training of trainers. We will be also trying to facilitate your experience. Yesterday, Stefan mentioned this as a really important area, that we need to create a learning environment for sharing of experiences, of knowledge. We will also have we will also interact in the context of South-South cooperation. There was a comment from Latin America. There is also another project in Africa which is being developed. So we will be also making an effort to link up with other ongoing projects in order to really facilitate that learning and knowledge sharing and collaboration, as well as policy support. So engagement with policymakers will be very important. Again, yesterday it was mentioned that it is absolutely necessary that policymakers will be invited to the harmonization workshop. And now when you look at those circles in the middle, so you have individual level, organizational level, and enabling environment level of capacity development. So this is the framework that APARI has fully integrated in its capacity development programs, because we strongly believe that you cannot just build capacity at one level. So you need to really look at individuals, organizations, as well as enabling environments. So this is the kind of a framework that we are taking. And when it comes to functional and technical capacities, so technical you are really familiar with. In terms of functional, what we really mean here are soft skills. So knowledge, attitudes, and behavior that are needed to successfully apply and coordinate technical capacities in order to achieve long-term development outcomes. So what is the rationale? Why did we bring these functional capacities in this project? There have been a lot of studies looking at the adoption of sustainable technologies over the past 20 years. And there is a realization that technologies per se or technical training is not enough. In the end, you know, it is farmers who are responsible for the implementation of production changes. They are accountable for their success. And there are also different kind of behaviors that are influencing them, okay? So they might have the training that they need, but what if there are some other factors that we need to consider? So there has been a perception that, or actually evidence that highly technical projects are missing out on the human aspects that are contributing to this, basically to speed up the technology application. And these human aspects are measured in soft skills or functional capacities that we will be talking about. And there has been also evidence coming up from these different studies that soft skill training that matches industry needs is a major determinant of project or institutional success. Recently, I have come across this really interesting study, which I invite you to visit. It was a research done by the European Union. It was done last year, and they have actually found that they have prepared this framework of behavioral factors that are affecting farmers' adoption of environmentally sustainable practices. So if you look at this bottom circle, yeah, you can see that knowledge is only one part of that, of this whole framework. There are many different factors, behavioral factors that are contributing to this adoption, okay? So when we are talking about functional capacity development, this is something that we need to consider. So of course, communication is playing a huge role in it, but also many other capacities which we will be talking about and exploring throughout this project. And just to give you an example that are really relevant to this project. So adaptability, I have included some examples of farmers and science, but these are also applicable to policymakers, that need to also adapt their policies in order to meet the changing context, changing consumer demands, adapt to changing situation. There's also communication, which is really important for farmers, for science, because there's often a huge communication gap, which requires interactions and really building this relationship and collaboration between practitioners and science. In terms of organization, we will be also talking, of course, about value chains. So when it comes to trade, it's really important to ensure good logistical support for transportation of raw materials. There are different factors that also farmers need to consider and organize their production accordingly. And of course, when it comes to technologies, there needs to be improved awareness of the different stakeholders of where the technology is going. And this is specifically relevant to the pesticide use, to irrigation, cultivation methods, etc. And of course, science is playing a huge role to support all these processes, all these behavioral changes, and especially to develop and test different technologies, as well as convince the users and policymakers of their value. Ravi has mentioned in his introduction remarks our work under the Tropical Agriculture Platform. So this is basically another way of how to present these capacities. And in the context of TAP, we have been talking a lot about these functional capacities for change and for innovation. These are some examples that you can see here. So capacity to navigate complexity, capacity to collaborate, reflect and learn, as well as engage in strategic and political processes that are all important in order to develop this capacity to adapt and respond in order to realize the potential of innovation. And I would like to mention here that out of the 48 partners of TAP, APARI is the only one that has actively integrated this framework in all its work, and in this project in particular. And in fact, through this project, we are going to be developing a model that we need to showcase also at this global level under the TAP, and inspire also others to actually integrate this into different technical projects. And actually, I heard from Ravi recently that in a meeting that has been taking place recently, the European Union was very pleased about this. So they are all they're all having high expectations, and we need to make sure that together we will deliver on them. So I would like to ask you, what do you think is innovation, and why you think that this is important for the success of this project? So just a very small reflection again. You can post your inputs in the chat box on these two questions: what innovation means to you, and why it is important for the success of this project. So I would like to ask you again to post your comments, your inputs in the chat box. This is really important to reflect on, because sometimes we are so much embedded in our work, whether it is technical or managerial or other, that sometimes we forget what important concepts mean and what is their actual implication for these different areas where we are working. So I think we can just spend 1 minute here and just reflect why innovation is important for this project. And again, you might have different perspectives, perceptions. So we are just curious to know from everybody. 57 people online, so I'm sure you are all actively listening. So innovation means a novel or out-of-box solution for any problem, and it would lead to success. Developing thinking, planning outside of the box, of the conventional wisdom regarding any practice, openness to new approaches toward a problem. A new tool to support sustainable farm productivity, especially for smallholders across Asia. Key proof of success is acceptance by growers on large scale. Okay. Anybody else? Why is innovation important for this project? So capacity development through strengthening analytical facilities, analytical training, upheaval in technology. Indonesian farmers use their spices or plants for their biopesticides, but we wish there is a quality control to have a constant result. Yes, so there are different process innovations, different technologies. And why they are important? To mitigate residues problem with few pesticides used in Asia. I think this speaks for all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your inputs. Ravi, innovation is production or adoption, assimilation, and exploitation of value-added novelty in economic and social spheres, renewal and enlargement of products, services, and markets, development of new methods of production, the establishment of new management systems. So it can be both a process and outcome. We have a comment from Dennis. Innovation is finding of a novel way of doing things. A project working on regulations, especially involving several countries, sometimes find it difficult to ensure that regulations, for instance, are translated into national guidelines. This is, really important. There have been such a project in some places which may not have been successful, and so it may be necessary to do the things differently to ensure that we get some outcomes. Innovation is in any product from research use and the solution for any issue. Could be product, process. Very good. Okay, thank you so much for all these inputs. I think this is really important that we see this perspectives, how you perceive innovation and why this is really important to this project. Good services. Okay. Yeah, please just keep adding them. We will consolidate at the end of the presentation. So capacities for change and innovation, they really require a system perspective. This is the kind of framework within which we are working in APARI, which we are also bringing to different projects, to different activities. And what this means is there are many different innovation actors involved. So we are trying to move away from this linear process of doing this kind of one-way knowledge transfer from research to practice. But what we are really trying to promote in this approach is the involvement of the different innovation actors, including farmers, businesses, but of course bridging institutions like APARI, but there are different extension institutions that are the bridgers, as well as the different environments and systems. And you are also innovation actors, okay, within these different groups that you can see in the diagram. So again, I would like you to reflect a little bit on this role of innovation actor that you are playing, because in the end, like, you are also bringing, innovations, from lab to farmers. You are influencing different processes when it comes to the policy changes, policy dialogue. So we are just wondering if you could reflect a little bit what you think is expected from you as a project participant who is an innovation actor. So during this project, but also after the project. Okay, so why you are basically part of this project? What is your role? What is expected from you? Because when the project finishes, it's not the end. It should be a means to something. Okay, so just take a few seconds or a minute to reflect on that, and you can post in the chat box.
Hi, Martina. Sorry to interrupt. We now have a suggestion from Catalina. So we request any participant from one country to turn on their video and give your input. It would be a motivation for other participants as well to post their comments. Any volunteers?
Yeah.
If you could raise your hand, we would try to unmute your video and you can give your suggestions.
Because this is actually
We really
also
want to
a good...
keep it interactive. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you, Sasireka. Thank you, Catalina, for this suggestion. And I think it's also a very good opportunity for you to clarify, because you might not even be clear what is expected from you. So now you have a chance. So please raise your hand. It will be really good to see you also.
If it is an in-person meeting, we would be delighted to meet you all in person. So please try to keep it as lively as possible. You're most welcome to interact with the participants. Thank you.
Nobody raising hands? You can also speak about the previous questions if you feel more comfortable. You can speak about the general expectations of the project, or how innovation can be useful, or like what role it plays in this project.
We have Mr. Vasant. I'll be joining us for the introduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Depending on where you are. I primarily speak from CropLife Asia perspective, and we see our role in this project to facilitate this project to logical end. And what I would like to draw the attention that if this project has to be successful, we need the involvement of the key people from regulatory agencies from the countries where this project is implemented. Otherwise, we will not see the logical end of this project. That is just a comment along with what we will do as a actor in this project from CropLab perspective.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this comment. Hopefully now others will join you. I think this is really valid. This is something that was mentioned yesterday, and also I mentioned it earlier. So we really need to ensure. So I'm really happy that you can validate this.
Yeah, Martina, I just want to add again, already FAO in 2012 report, which I shared yesterday, also has a very specific guidelines for biopesticide registration in ASEAN countries. And this report is published in 2012. And I think it will be good for the participants in this project, particularly those who are not involved in, particularly from outside ASEAN, they should look at this FAO report, which is very exhaustive and gives a clear guidelines what country should follow for establishing a regulatory system. It is more transparent and database and evidence-based decision making.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you could share the link with us through the chat box. That would be really useful.
Okay. Yeah, I will do that.
Thank you. I think Ravi has raised his hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Martina. I wish some of the implementing partners countries could have come up and given their view, but maybe I'm speaking on behalf of all the project partners, and I have put in the box the expectation from us during and after the project is capacity development, to be more specific here, SPS capacity development and functional capacity linked with that, and application of the capacity developed for trade, for policymakers, which I did not mention, for farmers, for academicians, and for industries. So it is a capacity and the application of capacity for various stakeholders to make a difference in what we are aiming for.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. Yeah, that's a really important point. We have different stakeholders involved, and the development of their capacities is an important outcome of this project. Thank you. Anybody else who would like to engage?
Yeah, so this is Michael. I guess I'm still thinking through from the technical perspective, but I would say that I think as far as what's expected from me, from myself, I think I've developed the innovation in the sense of the concept of residue mitigation and all the other areas that I think are necessary to support this project. But also, I think it's necessary to make sure that this technical training gets converted and is presented in a practical manner to help facilitate the transfer and to take into perspective the technical limitations of the countries involved, so that we can successfully add the functional capacity. I think the two have to be interactive. You can't have technical capacity be successful unless that technical capacity has a structure that is amenable to the recipient. And then to me, that's where the functional capacity picks up and makes that happen.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you also need a functional with content. Otherwise, you cannot put it in the context. I think that's what Michael is trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Michael. That's a really good point. There are also some comments in the chat box. The project will not sustain forever, but it will start working in the field for the sustainability because people will be used to with work and will not be back. So another important thing is that more stakeholders will be involved with the activity so that the project will sustain for longer. So really, this is also the idea, to create this network that will make the outcomes of the project more sustainable. Another comment from Mr. Ali: the solution must be sustainable because, yeah, it's a similar what I just read. So yeah, in order to sustain the farming community. So it's a similar comment that I just mentioned. Okay, is there anybody else? Would anybody like to interact at this point? Ravi?
Yeah, I may like to add a challenge that what we all have is beyond capacity development, that is capacity retention. Because in most of the Asian countries, we don't see capacity being there for a long time. People get transferred, promoted, they leave or whatever. So we need to have a mechanism probably, which we have yet not worked out. We need to do over the course of project to see how we can ensure capacity retention, what we will build with so much of homework.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi, for reminding us of this. This is a really important point as well. So what we need to really do also in this project is to try to build this kind of learning culture So I guess that also the training of trainers is really important, and how we are going to design it, I think can make a huge difference as well for this project. Okay, anybody else? If not, then we can move on. There will be still like a lot of interaction coming up, or let's say opportunities for interaction. Oh, actually, the next question is also related to you, to functional capacities. So what do you think are the most important functional capacities to successfully meet these expectations, and why? So this question does not just relate to like what capacities need to be built in order to deliver the technical outcomes of the project, but also strengthen, because a lot of it, of course, you have, because you have been working in this field for a very long time. But you might...
We have a participant.
Yeah?
Who's volunteering.
Okay, wonderful. Please introduce yourself.
Mr. Rationale?
Yes, so this is...
Yeah.
I am Muhammad Rationale from Bangladesh. I was working for plant quarantine for 13 years, but now I am on retirement. Actually, what Robi sir said is the main thing for South Asian countries, because what I do is is for this project I am doing outside of the project. I am talking with the high officials. They are my friends or colleagues. I am talking with them and engage them with these activities. If I go, if we do not make any mechanism to work with this, then there will be a great problem of this project like Bangladesh. Like what? So a mechanism should be made that this after this project, so that we can engage our stakeholders, our policy makers, so that everybody will be involved and the project will sustain for long, forever. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this comment, because this is exactly what is also coming up in this presentation, that we really need to take the individual responsibility to engage with our colleagues, our partners, our peers. This is really important for learning, to ensure learning within this project, but also beyond. Thank you. We have a comment from Mr. Gong Mani. This project will be very useful for Laos, in particular for strengthening technical staff performance, national codes development model, biopesticides development and innovation, and all these points pave the way in long run that facilitate trade and harmonization. Yeah, I think this is a really important also expectations coming from Laos. Thank you very much for this input. So again, you might start thinking about the possible capacities that you need to strengthen in order to successfully deliver on these expectations. Is there anybody else who would like to interact? Please raise your hand. It would be nice to see you. Now you have a chance, because we are keeping the videos off all the time. So it would be nice to see some new faces from these different countries that are participating in the project. Okay, if not, then you can still reflect throughout the presentations and post your comment anytime. Okay, so in February this year, we have done a survey. And in this survey, it was a kind of a needs assessment for the different technical and functional capacities. Unfortunately, and I think this is a mistake from our side, that we did not involve a mass of people like what we can see here in this meeting, or those that came yesterday. And probably the results would be a little bit different. We don't know. Maybe they would be similar to what we got. But in any case, it would have been, maybe more useful to get more inputs into the survey. So I think it was filled in by about 20 people or so. in any case, the top functional capacities that came up are those that you can see on the screen. So understanding and solving problems in field and analytical projects, engagement in a more productive dialogue for policy change in JMPR, CCPR, and Codex, influence of decision-making processes in domestic pesticide issues related to biopesticide regulations, and engagement with farmers to impact pesticide use, so to motivate them to develop their capacity to use biopesticides. So these are the top, or let's say the weakest functional capacities that came up of this survey. And what we have done, we have classified them according to those, according to the TAP framework. So capacity to navigate complexity, to reflect, to engage in strategic and political processes, and collaborate. This is just for internal purpose, to see like how, what type of capacities these are and how they could possibly contribute to innovation. So what we are going to do next, we are going to have another interactive session. And this time we are going to, because these are going to be the topics that for sure will be part of the project capacity development. So we just need to prioritize them to see how we can integrate them in our work plan. So which ones should be the top priority that could actually even be conducted, the training that can be conducted this year. Okay, so we're going to prioritize them with your help. Sasireka has kindly prepared a poll, and she will be sending a link through the chat box. Okay, now you click on that link, please, and rank these the development of functional capacities which you think have the highest priority. Okay, you can use, maybe Sasireka can explain the exercise better, what type of ranking is going to be used. Sasireka, I leave it up to you now to guide the participants.
Yeah, so we've given the question and we've given each option in a row. We kindly request you to order those questions with priority. Ranking 1 would be the lowest for that row and 4 would be the highest for that row. You can choose only one number, like one priority for each option. You cannot select 2 for 2 options. It should be like 1, 2, 3 or 4 for all the 4 options.
Yes, so there is a link to SurveyMonkey. So please click on it. And you can rank these capacities according to the different priorities that you perceive. There is also a field for suggestion. So if you have any suggestion on any different area that we probably missed, because in the Inception survey, we had actually quite a lot of these capacities listed, but these ones are the ones that came as really the most important ones. But of course, now we have more participants, so it would be also good to hear from you in case you did not participate in the survey before in February.
I request the participants to click on the SurveyMonkey link, https://www.surveymonkey.com/r, that link. I have received only 2 responses from you all. We really request you to participate in this. This would really help us in carrying forward the work.
So Sasireka can instantly see the results as you are entering your inputs. We will consolidate them and we will present them after the coffee break, which is coming up soon. So please just take 1 minute. It's not even 1 minute probably, just to reflect on the priorities for these capacities. In your opinion, in your view. Sasireka, how many did we get?
We only have 8.
Okay, so we have 60 participants today. So please contribute. This is really
If you have
important for
any
our work plan.
if you have any trouble in accessing the link, please let us know. We'll send you a direct message. Just above the chat which you have sent, message from Sasi Apari, that would be the link for the survey. Sorry if you couldn't access that, send you a direct message.
And of course, this question or this exercise is really important to the country participants, especially. But we also have with us a lot of people who are also going to be acting as trainers. So I think actually this question is relevant to all of us, but mostly for the country participants.
Ashan, I've tried sending you a link directly. Could you please try accessing that?
Okay, so Sasiraka, how many have we got?
Yes. So we've received 19 so far.
Okay, very good. So maybe those who missed this exercise, we can come back to it maybe during the coffee break.
Sure, yeah. I'll
or like throughout
keep posting the link.
Yeah, throughout the presentations, yeah. So let us move on.
If someone needs to take on the survey, please send a direct message. We would, if you have missed the link, we would send that to you again. We will continue with the presentation now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all who have provided their inputs. Now on the way forward. So what are the success factors for the project capacity development initiatives? So here you can see the most important factors which we believe are going to be influencing the capacity development. So of course we need a stakeholder commitment at all levels. So you that are working at the country level, of course the management and basically all of us. We will all need to contribute individually and be committed to the outcomes of the project. We will require leadership and good management, which is based on solid communication, and of course, a realistic action plan that can be adapted to different situations that will be flexible, also based on your needs and based on your feedback, which we will also need to ensure throughout the project. Flexibility, so we need to have some clear procedures that are built in the capacity development strategy I will be talking about in a minute. Transparency and accountability, so we need to really involve all principal stakeholders in monitoring and progress reporting, which my colleague Nora will be talking about later, and good communication. So we all need to keep all relevant institutions engaged and come up with appropriate feedback mechanisms that we can integrate in our communication, in our learning mechanisms. And on the next steps, our team, of course, together with Michael and the technical people that are involved in this project, or let's say the technical partners, I meant to say, will be designing a capacity development plan. So this will be for the prioritized functional areas, but we will also be working very closely with these technical trainers to integrate functional areas into the plan training. We will be also identifying different experts or practitioners that have direct experience in functional areas or some success stories from the field in the context of pesticide mitigation and promotional biopesticides. And we will be also, for each training, we will be preparing some concept notes. Of course, like thinking what are the objectives that we want to achieve and how these functional areas need to be integrated as part of the concept of this technical training. And this year, we are also planning one webinar on the prioritized topic for functional development. So that is why this exercise that we did previously is really important. And I will stop here. And I would like to ask you if you have any questions at this point. If there's anything that you need to clarify in terms of capacity development. Of course, this is just a few hour long meeting, so we cannot really train you directly. And it's very challenging to have this, to work online. So at this moment, we can answer your questions related to the functional capacity development. Please raise your hand, or you can use the chat box.
Dr. Ravi has raised his hand.
Okay, Ravi, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Martina, I would like you to tell everyone how the functional capacity training will be done within the project framework so that people get sensitized on that. And what we have already foreseen, probably we have to see like how we can scale up of what we have planned. And what actually needs to be done in the project, I think should be known to the people, apart from this very nice presentation, what you have done.
Yeah, thank you, Ravi. Okay, so at the moment we cannot have face-to-face interaction. So there will be two ways that we are going to be, or two mechanisms that within which we are going to be working. So first of all, there will be some webinars where we are going to be inviting some success stories or experts or practitioners that have experienced this capacity development at the local level, but also when it comes to interaction with policymakers. So of course, this depends on how you are going to be rating the importance of these functional capacities. So we will be able to tell you after the coffee break which one will be the topic for this year's webinar. But generally speaking, we will be working with the trainers of the different technical training. So together with Michael, as well as the trainers themselves. And we will be designing this training. So we will be providing our inputs to ensure that we will bring the training methods that are tailored to your needs, to encourage learning, to encourage collaboration. So there are different KM methods that we will be using in the context of this technical training in order to really encourage more learning and knowledge sharing from experience. So we will be looking at the tacit knowledge, which is based on the experience as well. I will be talking about this more in the context of the KM presentation, which is coming up. Is there something I forgot, Ravi? Or you would like to add to this?
No, the point was to see like how with individual capacity building program which are seen within the project, how you can come in, like that was, maybe we can do a separate exercise with Michael.
Yeah, but also I just mentioned flexibility, Ravi. So what is really important that every time we have a webinar where we are bringing experts, where we are, basically bringing this training on functional capacity, we also provide some space where the participants can express their key needs or immediate needs that they have. So we don't really need to stick to our, 4 functional capacities. This is going to be evolving because as you are implementing the project, there will be many different areas that will come up, okay, that you would feel that you need to learn more about. And this is something that we need to consider and adapt our approach. So we will be trying to be very flexible, and we will be trying to respond to your immediate needs. Okay?
Yeah, I think the message you are giving is very important, Martina, because we are prepared to be with the project implementers above and beyond the project. I mean, to
Yeah.
come up with the functional capacity programs. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I think
if
that I
may
have
I,
completed my 50 minutes.
so if may I add, we will just have one more discussion. Like we see like 59 participants, and we really encourage you all to participate after the breakout session. So we'll be having this is really more of an interactive session and not like an informative session. We proceed with your inputs as well. So we really encourage you to participate in this. Martina, please carry on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sasireka. So I think now we can have a break, a 10-minute break. Please don't leave this meeting. Just keep yourself muted, video off, and then come back after 10 minutes. But if you feel like it, you can also directly message some participants, because there is a feature direct messages, so you could interact with participants if you wish so. And of course, those who have not completed the SurveyMonkey, you can do so now, so that we can easily consolidate these inputs that we are getting from you. And we can already, at the end of today's session, we can already tell you like which training will happen this year in terms of the development of functional capacity. Okay, so let us take a break. Sasireka, what time should we come back?
Oh, we have 10 minutes break.
Okay,
So it would be, I'm looking at my Indian time. It would be 4 Indian time.
okay.
And yeah, New York time 6:35, Bangkok time 7:30, 5:35.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.